In the sterile hush of the hospital corridor, where the lights hummed softly and the smell of antiseptic clung to every breath, a small barefoot girl stood trembling, her fingers clenched around the sleeve of a doctor's white coat as if it were the last rope keeping her from falling into darkness, her eyes red and swollen from crying, her voice barely more than a whisper yet sharp enough to cut through the noise of rolling stretchers and distant announcements, begging him to save her mother who lay unconscious behind the closed doors of the emergency room, a woman the world had already written off as another nameless poor patient without insurance or influence, and the doctor, known to the hospital staff as calm, brilliant, and impossibly wealthy, a man whose name quietly funded wings of hospitals and scholarships across continents, felt his heart tighten as he looked down at the child, because there was something about her face that stopped him cold, something hauntingly familiar in the curve of her eyes, the stubborn set of her chin, the way she refused to let go even when nurses tried to pull her back, and when she sobbed that she would pay him one day, that she would work and earn and give him everything she had if only he saved her mommy. The billionaire doctor froze as if time itself had cracked open in front of him, memories flooding back of another night long ago, another hospital, another woman who had begged him not for money but for courage, a woman he had loved and lost. And as he gently knelt to the child's level, promising nothing yet giving everything in the warmth of his gaze, the machines inside the emergency room screamed into action as doctors fought to stabilize the girl's mother whose condition was worsening by the second, blood pressure crashing, organs failing, while the little girl clung tighter, whispering prayers she had learned from nights spent hungry and afraid, unaware that the men she was pleading with owned companies worth billions. That he could buy the hospital twice over without blinking, because in that moment none of that mattered, only the life slipping away behind the door and the child whose future balanced on the edge of a heartbeat, and when the doctor finally entered the operating room, taking over with a quiet authority that silenced everyone, his mind kept drifting back to the child's face, to the realization that she looked exactly like the woman he had once loved, the woman who had disappeared from his life. After a misunderstanding fueled by pride and silence, and hours later when the surgery ended and the mother was stabilized against all odds, the doctor stepped out exhausted, his hands shaking not from the complexity of the procedure but from the truth pounding in his chest, and when the child saw him she searched his eyes desperately, and when he nodded softly and told her mommy would live, she collapsed into tears of relief, hugging his leg with a gratitude so pure it shattered every wall he had built around his heart. And as nurses led her to see her recovering mother, the doctor stood alone in the hallway piecing together the impossible, realizing the timeline fit, realizing the woman on the operating table had been pregnant when she vanished, realizing the poor girl begging him was his daughter, the child he never knew existed. And when he finally entered the recovery room and saw the woman's eyes flutter open and lock onto his, recognition dawned slowly, painfully, and in that silence years of loss, regret, and unspoken love hovered between them, broken only when the little girl climbed onto the bed and held her mother's hand, smiling for the first time, and in that smile the billionaire doctor saw redemption, purpose, and a future rewritten, not by money or power but by compassion, responsibility, and love. And as days passed and the story spread quietly through the hospital of a doctor who saved a poor woman against impossible odds, none of them knew the deeper miracle that had taken place, the reunion of a broken family, the healing of wounds far older than the illness itself, and when the doctor finally knelt before the child again and promised her she would never have to beg anyone ever again, that her mother would always be safe, that she would grow up surrounded by love and opportunity, the child simply smiled and said she knew he would save her mommy because good people always listen, and that simple truth became the lesson he carried forward into a life transformed, choosing to be present not just as a healer of strangers but as a father and partner, understanding that wealth means nothing without someone to share your heart with, and if this story touched your heart, if it made you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of compassion to change destinies, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because every subscription helps us share more stories that inspire hope, humanity, and the belief that even in the darkest moments, a single act of love can change everything.